pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I now call this meeting of the Brevard County Board of Zoning Adjustment for June 19th, 2024 to order. First order of business would be if there are any staff announcements. None? No staff announcements? Okay, got that one out of the way. Our next order of business is to have the first reading. Mr. Bodie, would you tell us the function of the board?
Approval, Mr. Chairman, approval of the minutes?
That comes after the,
Okay, I apologize.
yeah,
That was the attorney on the other side.
no. You can go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, the Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial body established by the Board of County Commissioners under Chapter 62, Article 2, Division 4 of the Brevard County Code. The Board of Adjustment is empowered to hear requests of variances to the zoning regulation and sign regulation in Chapter 62, Article 6, and Article 9. Pursuant to Florida Rules of Appellate Procedure, any person or persons jointly or severally aggrieved by any decision of the Board of Adjustment may, within 30 days after the date the order is signed, apply to a court of competent jurisdiction for appropriate relief. Mr. Chairman, you have 3 items on your agenda today.
Thank you, Mr. Bodie. Usually we have reading 2, which is the definition of an undue hardship, done by our vice chairman. Chelsea, you're sitting in for her. Would you like to read that second reading, please?
An undue hardship definition is that a variance may be granted when it will not be contrary to the public interest and where, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter will result in unnecessary and undue hardship. The term undue hardship has specific legal definition in this context and essentially means that without the requested variance, the applicant will have no reasonable use of the subject property under existing development regulations. Personal medical reasons shall not be considered as grounds for establishing undue hardship sufficient to qualify an applicant for a variance. Economic reasons may be considered only in instances where the landowner cannot yield a reasonable use and/or a reasonable return under the existing land development regulations. The applicant must answer a variance hardship worksheet with 6 questions. The Board of Adjustments will discuss these questions today with each applicant who has requested a variance.
Thank you, Ms. Partridge. I will now address the board members, the applicants, and our audience regarding the board procedures for today's hearings. The Board of Zoning Adjustment, as a quasi-judicial board with members appointed by the Brevard County Board of Commissioners, will utilize Robert's Rules of Order to conduct its proceedings. The chair is asking all board members not to ask questions while the applicants are making their presentations. Once the applicants have completed their presentations, we will begin board questioning with the board member who represents the applicant's district. When concluded, questioning is open to the full board. The chair will recognize each board member in turn. Once all board members have completed their questioning, we will then open the floor to the audience, any audience member who may be here to speak concerning the applicant's application. Anyone from the audience wishing to speak will be given the opportunity to address the board once and only once. So be concise and complete. At the conclusion of the public comment, the applicant will be given additional time for rebuttal, as well as to present their final comments. Once completed, no further comment will be heard from the applicant or the public. All action moves to this side of the bar. We will not use a timer for this meeting. Instead, we are asking each speaker to be concise in what they have to say. It is important that you stay on the subject and avoid information that is not relevant. All persons speaking must provide their name and address for the public record. Those wishing not to verbally state their address may ask the clerk at the podium for an address card. Please fill it out and return it to the clerk. Are there any questions about these board procedures? Okay. Our next order of business will be to approve last meeting's meeting minutes. Those were distributed in packets to the board members. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing none, I need a motion from someone and a second for approving those meeting minutes.
Mr. Chair, I didn't receive a copy of the minutes in my packet. Can I take a look at them? I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 15, 2024 Board of Adjustment meeting.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McCann has made a motion to approve. Mr. Holmberg has seconded. Any discussion? None? Okay. I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. The meeting minutes from the last meeting are approved. At this point then, Mr. Bodie, may we have our first applicant, please?
Yes, item G1, Alexis Kelsey Fajardo, request variance to Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1341, 5A, to permit a variance of 10.75 feet from the 20-foot rear setback for a principal structure in an RU-1-9 single-family residential zoning classification, and this is located at tax count number 2419928 in District 2.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward? I know you're an officer of the court, but
Thank you. Kim Rezanka on behalf of Alexis and Kelsey Fajardo. I'm with Lacey Lyons Rezanka, 1290 US 1 Rockledge, Florida. Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the Board of Adjustment. The Fajardos are here with me if you have any particular questions. This is a circumstance where they had contracted to put in a sunshade, which is not a porch, it's more of a patio. Once it's attached to the building, it becomes part of the structure. Once they did that, it put it out of the setback. The contractor really was the one at issue. They're not here. I've tried to reach them. They weren't able to be here. So basically, we're trying to fix a $20,000 structure that was added to the building. This is in North Merritt Island. It's behind the, what is it called? The Emerald Plaza development, the MUV cannabis dispensary, Domino's Pizza, and a cigar lounge. So it won't be impacting any residents to the east of there. So we would ask that you approve this. I can go through the factors. They're pretty well stated in there. And we would ask that you would approve this to make this structure conforming so that they can have their covered patio that they permitted, but it was not put in the right place.
okay. Your application arises in District 2, which is represented by Mr. McCann, and so you have the floor for questions.
Good afternoon. The structure that was erected, was that done by permit?
Yes, there was a Brevard County permit.
A permit was issued with the plans in intrusion into the setback?
Yes.
Okay.
Nor has a permit been revoked either.
I drove by this morning, and it looked to me as if it was just a roof. Is it in the construction phases?
It's just it's a sunshade. It's a
Okay.
sun covering with metal posts.
Okay.
It's not a patio because it's not enclosed walls, so it's just, I mean, they call it a patio, it's not a porch.
But it's not going to be enclosed?
It's not going to be enclosed. It's completely done. They went to get it permitted. There was a survey issue. We had to get a new survey. And then we found out that when someone else looked at it, that it was in the setback.
And the setback or the rear property line has a fence, a privacy fence
Yes,
along
sir.
it, right?
There's a fence for this property and for the shopping center.
And then the shopping center behind it, there's not even any windows in the back of that shopping center.
No, sir.
And there's a pretty substantial buffer or
50
a
feet.
grass area between the fence and the shopping center.
50 feet, yes, sir.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Does any other board member have questions for this applicant? Seeing none? Okay. So, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or against this application for the variance? Seeing none, I'll close that part. Any final words?
No, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Just request approval.
Okay, so, Mr. McCann, you have the opportunity to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance request as depicted in the survey.
And do we have a second?
Second.
So, Mr. McCann has made a motion to approve. Ms. Partridge has made a motion or has seconded that motion. I'll open it up for any board discussion.
Like I said, I drove by there this morning. You can't even, it looks like just a roof with no walls, and just as described by the applicant's representative. There's a privacy fence at the rear of the property. There's privacy fences around the property on the side of the property. You can't even see it from any of the other properties. Including the rear property, which is a commercial building, a shopping center. I think, like I said, like I made the motion, I'm in support of the variance request.
Any other discussion or comments? Nope. All right. Then I have to read the 6 questions into the record. Hopefully they're written here. Okay. There are 6 questions that need to be answered by us through our vote. The special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. That the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. That granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. That literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, and that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to public welfare. With those 6 questions in mind, I will call the vote from the board. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion and your variance passes. Mr. Bodie, may we have the next applicant, please?
Yes, item G2, MJ Coop LLC requests variance of Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-1401-4 to permit a variance of 25 feet from the 25-foot lot width required in an RRMH-1 Rural Residential Mobile Home Zoning Classification. And this is located at tax account number 2000674 in District 1.
Okay. Will the applicants please come forward? As tedious as it sounds, it looks like you have 2, and we're going to have to go through this 2 times.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Need your name and address for the record?
Yep, Michael Coop, 3925 Hidden Hills Drive, Titusville, Florida, 32796.
Okay. The MJ Coop LLC, represented by MJ Coop here is?
He's the owner of the
Okay,
LLC.
so we're okay there.
Okay,
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're giving us today is the truth?
the truth. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. How can we help you?
Basically bought 2 lots. They're, what I was told is they're zoned prior to 1978, so they're like a non-conforming lot. So back then, they could be 100 foot. I guess the new code is it has to be 125 foot.
Okay. I think that's very concise. I like that.
I was told it's supposed to be pretty easy, so.
So this arises, your application arises in District 1, which is represented today by Ms. Partridge. You have the floor for questions.
This is a fairly standard application. I've seen things like this before, so I don't really have any questions. I'll defer if anybody else on the board has questions.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. So I got to go through a little procedure here.
Okay.
And just step aside.
All right.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or against this application? Seeing none, please come back. Do you have anything else you want to say before we?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Just take a seat because you're going to be back up.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Partridge, this application arises in your district. You have the opportunity to make a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as depicted by survey.
I'll second it.
Okay? We have a motion to approve this application by Ms. Partridge, a second by Dr. Bass. Is there any discussion? My only comment would be we run into this all the time, many, many times. So it's not unusual and to me, to my mind, it's a reasonable request. So with no more questions from the board or no more discussion, I will call the vote. Oh, no, I got to read the 6 hardship questions. All right. The special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification. That the special conditions and circumstances will not result from the actions of the applicant. That granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, business, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification. That literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by their other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant. That the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, building, or structure. That the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such use variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With those thoughts in mind, I will call the vote of the board. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for one of your parcels passes. Now we have to go through the whole thing again for the second one, so come on up to the podium. I'm sorry. First thing we have to do is Mr. Bodie has to read in the applicants.
Okay.
No, you go ahead, Mr. Bodie. Don't you read the applicant's application first? You look familiar.
Okay, item G3, MJ Coop LLC, request variance, Chapter 62, Article 6, Brevard County Code, Section 62-14014, to permit a variance of 25 feet from the 125-foot lot width required in RRMH-1 Rural Residential Mobile Home Zoning Classification. And this is located at tax account number 2000676 in District 1.
Okay, thank you. You're still under oath,
Okay.
so you can make your statement of presentation again.
Okay. Same as the other lot, falls into the, doesn't meet the requirements for the 125 foot because it was zoned prior to 1978.
Okay.
Yep.
Very concise, thank you.
All right.
Now I have to ask for, I think, let me check my. Okay. It's, Ms. Partridge, this is in your district, so you have first opportunity to ask questions.
Once again, this is a very standard request, so no questions from me.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor or against this application? Seeing none, any final conclusion statement from you, the applicant?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Ms. Partridge, you have the floor for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as depicted by survey.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Partridge to approve the application. We have a second by Mr. Humberg. And is there any board discussion on this, this matter?
Mr. Chair, for clarification, just a little confused how the application reads, the notes of the application. Is the, and I guess I can ask Mr. Bodie, is the code provide for 125-foot lot width or 150-foot lot width?
The code, whenever it was subdivided in the GU, it required 150 feet of lot width. It did not meet that. One of them was subdivided in 1969. The other lot was subdivided in 1970. So they're both subdivided around the same time. So it didn't make them meet. They were inadequate in size. He's got to go through a rezoning, and so the rezoning is for the proposed RRMH1, rural residential manufactured home zoning, and that's to bring it into compliance with that zoning code,
Thank you.
which requires 125 feet.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay. I will read the 6 hardship questions. And they are that special conditions and circumstances exist which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or buildings in the applicable zoning classification, that the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant, that granting the variance requested will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the provisions of this chapter to other lands, buildings, or structures in the identical zoning classification, that literal enforcement of the provisions of this chapter would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the identical zoning classification under the provisions of this chapter, and will constitute unnecessary and undue hardship on the applicant, that the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible reasonable use of the land, building, or structure, that the granting of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this chapter, and that such variance will not be injurious to the area involved or otherwise detrimental to the public welfare. With those 6 questions in mind, the board, I call for a vote. All those in favor of approving this application for variance, say aye.
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 Any opposed? You passed. I believe that's the end of our applications for today. Okay?
Yes,
then-
that's it.
Then I call the adjournment of this, this meeting. Thank you very much.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.